House is reading the Constitution as if it said the process applies to all civil officers of the United States and people who aren't civil officers but once were. Exactly what it does not say. We've been told by the House managers about miscitations in our brief. I'd like to draw your attention to page 37. This is a substantive misrepresentation to you, I would respectfully suggest. And it reflects to me a very different view of democracy, a fear of democracy. They wrote on page 37 of their brief that the framers, I'm paraphrasing the first part, the framers themselves would not have hesitated to convict on these facts. Their worldview, this is a quote now, was shaped by a study of classical history as well as a lived experience of resistance and resolution. They were aware of the danger posed by opportunists who incited mobs to violence for political gain. They drafted the Constitution to avoid such thuggery, which they associated with the threat of civil disorder and early assumption of power by a dictator. The citation is 178, Bernard Bailyn, The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. That's this book. Professor Bailyn, when he gave this description of the threat of civil disorder and the early assumption of power by a dictator and thuggery, was referring to early colonists' view toward democracy. They feared democracy. That's what they call thuggery. Democracy, because it's an elitist point of view, an elitist political point of view. We don't fear democracy, we embrace it. In summing up, let's be crystal clear on where we stand and why we are here. The singular goal of the House managers and House leadership in pursuing the impeachment conviction of Donald J. Trump is to use these proceedings to disenfranchise at least 74 million Americans with whom they viscerally disagree, and to ensure that neither they nor any other American ever again can cast a vote for Donald Trump. And if they convince you to go forward, their ultimate hope is that this will be a shot across the bow of any other candidate for public office who would dare to take up a political message that is very different from their own political point of view as the direction in which they wish to take our country. Under our Constitution, this body in the impeachment process must never be permitted to be weaponized for partisan political purposes. This article of impeachment must be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction based on what we have discussed here today and what's in our brief. The institution of the presidency is at risk unless a strong message is sent by the dismissal of the article of impeachment. Before we close, I want to leave you with two thoughts. One was expressed by Abraham Lincoln. He comes to mind first because of the way in which our nation is now divided. We must learn from his times. He had a simple but important message about the paramount importance of doing what is right. Mr. Lincoln said, stand with anybody that stands right, stand with him when he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. In both cases, you are right. In both cases, you oppose the dangerous extremes. In both cases, you stand on moral ground and hold the ship level and steady. In both, you are national and nothing less than national. And the second message is from one of Mr. Lincoln's favorite poets, who wrote in 1849 at a time fraught with division and risk for even more. The message from that other time of division is a call for hope and unity to bring strength. It has special meaning today. Poet Longfellow wrote, sail forth into the sea, O ship, through wind and wave, right onward steer. The moistened eye, the trembling lip, are not the signs of doubt or fear. Sail forth into the sea of life, O gentle, loving, trusting wife, and safe from all adversity, upon the bosom of that sea, thy comings and thy goings be. For gentleness and love and trust prevail o'er angry wave and gust, and in the wreck of noble lives, something immortal still survives. Thou too sail on, O ship of state, sail on, O Union, strong and great. Humanity with all its fears, with all the hopes of future years, is hanging breathless on thy fate. We know what master laid thy keel, what workman wrought thy ribs of steel, who make each mast and sail and rope, what anvils rang, what hammers beat, and what a forge and what a heat, who shaped the angers of thy hope. Fear not each sudden sound and shock. 'Tis of the wave, excuse me, 'tis of the wave and not the rock. 'Tis but the flapping of the sail and not a rent made by the gale. In spite of rock and tempest's roar, in spite of false lights on the shore, sail on, not fear to breast the sea. Our hearts, our hopes, are all with thee. Our hearts, our hopes, our prayers, our tears, our faith triumphant over our fears, are all with thee, are all with thee.